There's enough food to feed 10, 12 billion people right now, and so a lot of people think, oh, it's a population problem, right? But it's not a population problem, because there really is enough food to feed everybody. There's enough food to feed 10, 12 billion people right now, and so a lot of people think, oh, it's a population problem, right? But it's not a population problem, because there really is enough food to feed everybody. Even with all the meat that we eat, there's still enough food to eat to feed everybody. And all the meat that we eat and all the crap that we eat, we don't have to eat that, right? We're actually going to be healthier if we don't eat so much crap, not so much content. So yeah, if we had better lifestyles, dietary lifestyles, then there'd be even more food to feed everybody. And even more than that, there's even enough food in those regions to feed everybody, right? It's not just like all the food's here in the U.S. and we can feed everybody in Africa or India, right? It's not even that. There actually is enough food in India and sub-Saharan Africa and other places to feed those people. It's just that it's not a problem of supply, it's a problem of access.
Last time I ate three meals a day. The last time?
Well, it's been a while since I ate 3 meals a day. Probably about 6 months ago.
Scary out. It is really scary.
To me, global hunger and poverty is the biggest problem in the world today. More people die every day of global poverty than any other crisis, than violence, than crime, than anything else. 20, 30,000 people die every day, the equivalent of 8 or 10 9/11s every day. So most of that death is silent because we don't hear about it. It's a common everyday problem and not one that makes the headlines in the news. One of my experiences there with Catholic Relief Services is the understanding that aid can sometimes have negative effects as well, and so kind of have a mixed perception about aid in that way, right? I think aid is vital. I've seen hospital clinics and people who are kept alive only with international aid from the U.S. But some of the negative effects that we saw in Catholic Relief Services and other food aid programs is that when it's donated in this way, where you pay an Iowa farmer, pay an Baltimore shipping company, ship it halfway across the world, and give it to people who are not necessarily they're farmers, and so they're trying to raise their own food as well. Then that aid can really, that food aid especially, can compete with what they're trying to do. That actually can be counterproductive. And so we saw big bags of grain from the U.S. Being sold on the local market and competing with local farmers who are trying to make a living. And so it messes up the markets there. It creates a kind of temporary satisfaction of their need, but it doesn't give them any help long term in developing.
My name is Kyle Riggs.
My name is Andrew Sullivan.
My name is Allie Crocker.
I'm the Director of Event Management with Feeding Children Everywhere.
And I'm the Program Manager for Stop Hunger Now in Philadelphia.
I went to Tanzania in the summer of 2010, I believe, and I stayed in a little village called Mkash, and that's sort of where I started to build this project.
Feeding Children Everywhere is a social charity that mobilizes and empowers people to package healthy meals for hungry children all around the world.
Stop Hunger Now is an international relief organization. By creating this movement of volunteers throughout the country engaged in packaging these meals, they're being educated and they're getting a hands-on experience, but it's also used to leverage education internationally and getting children into school.
Tuko Pamoja Mkash is what it's called, and it stands for We Are Together with the Village of Mkash. And basically the premise of the project is that it's a community development project. So we're working with different groups of people in the village to kind of help them become more self-sustaining. For the past, hundreds of years they've been really dependent on aid and different people giving them things. And so our vision was to kind of help them become more sustainable and work for themselves and work upon their entrepreneurial spirit to really develop things in the village that would help them come out of poverty and really make a difference for themselves.
So we do these meal packaging events where hundreds or even thousands of volunteers come together on an assembly line process, and they package anywhere from 20,000 meals to 1 million meals in one day.
The first thing that goes into the meal is Himalayan sea salt. It's a pink salt and it's super rare and it has 84 vitamins and minerals in it. And then goes the dried vegetables. There's 7 different kinds of dried vegetables. There's carrots, onions, just to name a few. And then there's white rice, and then there's lentils, which is like the main part of the meal. It's super healthy, full of protein, and it makes it a superfood.
Our meal, we've actually worked with a nutritionist to develop. The nutritional needs, especially of a child, are huge. A child's body is growing and developing so quickly, very rapidly, and protein is vitally important. One for muscles, muscles have to have protein to grow, and then also the brain. The brain has to have protein to grow and develop and function. And when a child is hungry or malnourished and doesn't have the protein that it needs, then it's really hard for them to be educated to reach the place that we want them to get to.
All the Stop Hunger Now meals consist of 4 main ingredients. They consist of rice, vegetables, vitamin packet. It's a packet of 21 vitamins and nutrients, as well as a delicious chicken flavoring with no meat products though. All of our meals are fully vegetarian. And the way we keep it vegetarian and still add protein is through soy. So we also have soy in the meals. So the 4 ingredients are rice, soy, dehydrated vegetables, which consist of carrots, onions, peppers, celery, tomatoes, and the vitamin packet. And we believe that the vitamin packet is the heart of the meal. That is what really is going to help these children fight off malnutrition.
2 of my bosses at Feeding Children Everywhere, Kara and Christina, took a mission trip to Haiti about a year ago, and they came across these 2 little Haitian twins, Anderson and Andrew Lee. They were eating dirt, they were stick skinny, they were experiencing severe malnutrition.
I think one of the things that really hit me hard was that there's so many kids that are just kind of living in poverty, and they don't really, they have families, but their families don't support them economically or financially, and so they really have to work for themselves. And a lot of the kids would miss school because they were doing different projects, like taking bananas to the market, and to them that was more important than getting the education that they needed. There's one little girl there who really touched our hearts while we were there. Her name is Scola, and when we met her she was 3 years old. And she immediately came up to us, and she was so excited to see foreigners there. And of course all the little kids asked for money or toys, but she was different in that she really wanted to learn. And so she would come with her little notebook every single day and want to learn math or reading or something like that.
While I was in Nicaragua with Stop Hunger Now, we were visiting a school where they were feeding children. They feed up to 200 children every day out of this school, which is 1 box of the meals that you see behind me is 216 meals. So the school was fed with 1 box. But to get to the school, we had to go down a road that was muddy because it was raining. So we had to park the truck and walk. And while we were walking, we came across a huge trash dump, a huge city trash dump. And while we were walking, we saw these little tin huts literally around the trash dump, and little kids digging through the trash, trying to find something to eat, trying to find food. And I thought that was horrible enough. And then as you're walking, there's these gigantic vultures sitting on the top of these trash heaps that are right next to these little kids. And it just broke my heart. As we were walking as well, we started seeing more of the houses, and we asked our guide, that was Nicaraguan, why there's houses around there and what they were for. And he said that's actually where they live. So they live right there at the trash dump. If they don't eat, it's death. There's no government help. There's nobody helping them. It's a really extreme situation. And there are 1 billion people on this planet living in that kind of situation. And then seeing that and walking by that and smelling the smells and seeing the sights really hit home for me.
They brought them to one of Feeding Children Everywhere's partners, Open Door Haiti, where they take in little kids and feed them and teach them how to read and things like that. They continue to get updates on Anderson and Anderlee, and they gained a healthy amount of weight. They're in school, and they have come such a long way from eating dirt abandoned in the streets.
So Sam and I decided that we wanted to make a long-term commitment to her by funding her schooling. And so we sent her to school at a private school where it was totally English immersion. And so Sam went back this past 2 months ago, and they called me on the phone, and now she's fluent in English and she can speak to us, and it's just so fun to see that from like where she was a couple years ago to where she is now, and she's made so much growth, and I can tell that she's going to really make a difference in the village, and she has so much to offer, and it's just cool to see that.
The good news, I think, is that global poverty and hunger is decreasing significantly. Most people don't understand that, in fact, there's been huge strides toward reducing the percent of the population who actually is hungry on an extreme level. I mean, hungry in the sense that they don't have their basic needs met and are suffering from malnutrition and other diseases that are preventable because of hunger. So, we're talking about 50 years ago, 40 or 50% of the whole population was extremely poor, that just did not have their basic needs met. Today we're talking about 15%, 10-15% of the global population. So that's significant. We're talking about 500 million or 1 billion people that are getting their basic needs met today that didn't have that 50 years ago. So there's been big progress on that.
What I would like to tell anybody who's interested in Stop Hunger Now is not only are you going to make a tangible impact on fighting hunger and global poverty, but also you're going to know exactly where the meals go. We follow up with all of our volunteers and let them know exactly where the meals go when they are shipped out of our warehouse. So not only are you packaging the meals, but then you're going to see pictures and images and stories of kids that are receiving your meals.
I think the answer for how people can take action is decide to do something and making sure that people are doing the right thing that makes sense, that has the maximum impact. And obviously my answer is to get involved with Feeding Children Everywhere, because we can package a healthy meal and ship it around the world to a hungry child for a quarter. For 25 cents, we can provide a healthy meal for a hungry child.
It doesn't take much to make a difference, and you need to find something that you're passionate about. I think everyone has something to offer, and I think if you really look at what you're benefiting from, you can really help another person who's struggling. I think we're all meant to help each other out, and it's just about finding your place and finding what you're great at and what other people are struggling with so that you can really complement each other.